everybody out there in YouTube land, it's me, Logan Albright, back with another book review for you. Today I've got Shardik by Richard Adams. Richard Adams, as you will probably know, is the author of the famous Watership Down book. And I read Watership Down as a kid, and I loved it. I thought it was one of the most magical, beautiful, fun stories I've ever read. Totally immersive, totally involved in it. It's been many years since I've read it, and I don't really remember that much about it, but I remember just that feeling I had of absolutely loving it. And so when I was reading recently Stephen King's The Dark Tower, he refers to Shardik, and I didn't know what that reference was, but I looked it up and I found out that the reference was to Richard Adams' second novel, Shardik, from 1974, about a giant bear. And I thought, wow, I loved Watership Down so much, I should read Shardik. And I was very excited about it, and I really couldn't wait to get into it. I was hoping for the same kind of experience I had with Watership Down. So Shardik takes place in a fictional universe, and the action follows the main character, whose name is Kelderic. He's a hunter on the island of Ortelga, and he's regarded by everybody else as a little bit of a simpleton, a little bit slow. He's known as Kelderic Play with the Children because he hangs out with kids all the time instead of doing the stuff that men do. So kind of a person on the lowest rung of the social ladder. But one day he's out hunting and he sees this giant bear, Shardik. And Shardik is regarded as kind of in the historical myths of this culture as a symbol of the power of God, and he's overwhelmed by it. And as things progress, he gets involved with these ancient priestesses who have been maintaining the cult of Shardik for all these years, and they find him and they kind of nurse him back to health because he's not in very good shape. And ultimately, Shardik is used to help them win this war against the city of Bekla that they want to wage. And Kelderic becomes the head of the Beklan Empire. He becomes the priest king of Bekla as a result of his ability to kind of commune and communicate with Shardik, and at least to the extent that Shardik doesn't kill him. So that's the basic plot. There's a lot of themes in this book that I found really interesting, and a lot of kind of deep thoughts that the author explores that I loved. One of the major ones is the tension between politics and religion, because you have the priestesses of Shardik who believe that he should be followed and worshipped and left alone, and you have the more secular leaders who say, well, Shardik is here to help us in our political goals, namely this war with Bekla. We need to use Shardik to help us win the war. And the priestesses are kind of horrified at the idea of using a holy animal for that purpose, and that tension is there. And I think that's a really fascinating thing to explore, this idea of kind of corrupting a kind of pure and simple holy idea in order to twist it and pervert it for political ends, which is thoroughly explored in the book. And I love that. I thought that was great. You have the elevation of Kelderic from the lowest member in society to the highest member of society, and kind of how he deals with that, and how this concept that power corrupts is certainly involved in there. I thought that was cool. I think the characters are somewhat well-rounded. I have more to say about the characters in a minute, but one of the interesting things I thought about the characters in particular, there's a character who's the Baron of Ortelga, and he's kind of cast as the antagonist in the early part of the book. But what I like about him is he's not just a cartoon villain. He's got his motives, and they come to him and they say, we found this giant bear who's the power of God. We need to come worship him and allow him to do what he does. And he's like, well, maybe, but if I let a giant bear run through my village, he's going to kill everybody and destroy all the buildings, and I really can't let that happen. That seems pretty irresponsible for me as a leader. And, it's kind of hard to argue with that. He's got a good point. And so I can see where he's coming from. I like villains where they have a comprehensible motivation, and you can see where they're coming from. And it's not just lust or greed or power or anything like that. Like, he wants to do a good job as a leader of his people and protect them from a wild animal that could potentially kill them. So although he ends up being kind of wrong, he has a point. It's hard to argue with that. So I like that part of it as well. There's also themes relating to duty and destiny and, fulfilling your purpose in life that are all woven throughout this book. It's got a lot of ideas bouncing around, which I think are really cool. However, I didn't really connect with it as I hoped to. I was hoping to have this kind of similar to Watership Down experience where I fell in love with the book. I found myself having difficulty emotionally getting involved in it. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is the characters kind of speak in a little bit of this stiff, stilted way that fantasy characters often speak in. They're a little bit detached, and I found myself having a hard time connecting with them in that. And then in the early part of the book, he uses a lot of very foreign made-up names for these things, obviously, because it's a fictional universe. And you're bombarded with so many of those right off the bat that I found it hard to keep up and keep track of who was who and what was what and what was going on. That was a little bit problematic for me in the first part. But you get over that and you get used to it as it goes through. But it may be one of the things that kept me from really connecting with the book. And I think the main thing is the characters. Because although I think he does a fairly good job of making the characters have understandable motivations, like you have Kelderic, who wants to do his right thing as the high priest of Shardik, but also wants to maintain his own power. You have the Baron, who wants to protect his people from Shardik. You have the priestesses, who want to maintain the cult of Shardik and worship him. Like, their motivations are clear, and that's good. But I don't know, like, I just had a hard time feeling what they were feeling. I had a hard time empathizing with them, putting myself in their place. They seemed like they were held at a distance from me, the reader, throughout the book, and I never really got to be involved in their lives the way I wanted to be, to really become emotionally attached to the characters. And so while I enjoyed the book and I was having a good time reading it, I never really got myself put into the book the way I would in a book that I truly love. I never really found myself empathizing with the situations the way that I would like to in a really great book. And I don't know why exactly that is. I think it may be just the writing style and the fact that he didn't go into more character depth. Maybe that's the problem. I certainly found the characters in Watership Down very, very relatable and very empathetic. And so, I don't know. But I had a hard time loving the book. I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. I learned from it, and it made me think about some things that I hadn't thought about before. But I didn't, emotionally latch onto it. So that's where I would finish with that. So that's kind of what I think of Shardik. I guess that's why it's not really well known as his other books, or as Watership Down anyway. It didn't become the hit that Watership Down became. Maybe other people felt the same way I did and had a hard time latching onto it and really diving into it. It's certainly a lot more adult than Watership Down in terms of the language. Like, Watership Down is sort of a children's book. It's got some adult themes in it, but it's pretty easy to read to kids. This is a lot longer, and it's a lot denser, and the language is a lot more difficult to read to children. So I think that might be part of it as well. But it's a shame he didn't really become a more well-known author. I guess he's got other books after this, but I don't know anything about them. I may have to look into them at one point. But yeah, I guess a little bit of a letdown on Shardik. A good book, not a great book. So that's where I am on that. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you've read it, maybe there's people out there who just adore it and love it. I'd love to hear from you and let me know what you love about it and what you think is great about it. Please leave me a comment. I'll respond. If you enjoyed the video, like the video and subscribe to the channel, because it helps me make more videos like this. And I like to make videos, but I need more subscribers. So subscribe. That'd be cool. Appreciate it. Anyway, I'll come back with you next week with some more book reviews, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. I've been Logan Albright, your humble host, and I'll catch you next time.